Hello, everyone. It's good to be with you once again. Today, I have another distinguished guest with me, Professor Anil Deolalikar. He has many degrees from elite universities. I won't name them, but after his doctorate, he taught at Yale and the University of Pennsylvania economics. And he has recently stepped down as the founding dean of the School of Public Policy at the University of California, Riverside. He's now just a professor of economics at the University of California. Quite a step down. Anyhow, he's an expert on many things. He has worked in Africa and Asia, and also been to China many times, Indonesia, so on, Africa many times. I lived there in Nairobi, and he's an expert on all of these issues. Of course, his most important qualification is that he's my wife's younger brother. So that's a big bonus in the family. Anyhow, today he's going to talk about an issue that is making headlines. That is, India's population is now larger than China's. Nothing unexpected for those of us who are in this business, because this has been projected for several years. And of course, but once it's projected and it's in the public, it's a big news item. And we all know that China has had big problems with its population because of its one-child policy. And we will hear from Anil how the reversal of this one-child policy is working. And is this a big cause of concern for China, what's happening to its population? And is it a big cause of some kind of celebration for India that we are now got the gold medal? We are the largest country by population. Does it mean we have the gold medal, or does it mean that we are in ever bigger trouble because we cannot sustain such a large population? So these are very controversial and difficult issues, but Anil can explain them to us in very simple and quick language. So over to you, Anil. What do you think?
Thank you, Subodh. It's a pleasure to join you on this particular episode of your video chats. And again, delighted to speak to your audience about some of the issues that you just raised. I think, just to make it very clear, we don't know exactly whether India's population has surpassed China's yet or will do so within the next year or two. All these population estimates are precisely that. They are just estimates. But it's happened a little sooner than people actually thought. It was anticipated sometime in 2030 or thereafter, and it sort of happened a little sooner than that. Well, and as to your larger question, is this a cause for celebration or is this a cause for concern? Like any economist, I would say I won't give you a straight answer. Yes, it is concern or it is...
Two-handed economist.
Yes, I am a two-handed economist. All I will say is that it is not a matter of great rejoicing because, as they say, with a great power comes great responsibility. And in some sense, now that we are the largest country in the world in terms of population, we are going to have a lot of responsibilities to shoulder that are not going to be easy. So, yeah, go ahead.
No, good. I had not heard anybody say this before. So it's a very interesting point that along with the size comes the responsibilities.
Yes. And I don't just mean by geopolitical strategic responsibilities, but I also mean domestic responsibilities. Because one of the things that happens, and again, the popular press has highlighted this, what happens when you have falling fertility rates or birth rates, rapidly falling birth rates, what typically happens is that every country goes through a period of what is called demographic dividend, because at that point, at that stage of the population growth cycle, these countries typically have a very small share of the elderly population, and they have a very large share of children. And basically what happens 20, 30 years after fertility rates start declining is that as this baby boomers enter the working age, defined typically as 15 to 25, 35, 45, whatever cutoff you want, the share of the earning population relative to the share of the dependent population begins falling. And that's where the country is set to start reaping the demographic dividend. It's not yet reached the stage where it has a very large elderly population. It's also past the stage when it has a lot of dependent children below the age of 15. And so it's in the sweet spot, as you will, of having a growing share of the working age population relative to the dependent population. And
let me put it in another term. The average age, say in Nigeria, median is 20 years. India is 29.
Yes.
China is 39.
Yes.
Germany and Japan are 49.
Absolutely.
So they don't have, and in Italy, there are no children. Okay. So they are facing, so this is the problem that Anil is highlighting, that the sweet spot in India seems to be with the average age of 30, you expect all of the average person to be of working age and not looking at retirement.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. And yet you don't have too many, the proportion of children in the population who also have to be taken care of, they are a dependent population, is also falling. And so that is the sweet spot I was talking about.
In Africa, the age is 20, no? So that means there are a lot of young people below 20 who are not yet earning and who are to be looked after. In India, it's 29, so we are better off that way. China is 39, 40, something like that. Okay,
yes,
that's good.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so historically, over the last 40, 50 years, it is argued that East Asia, countries like Korea, Taiwan, China, Singapore, Malaysia, Thailand, all of them sort of experience fertility decline much earlier than India did. And so they had a period of a big sort of demographic dividend in the 1970s and 1980s and 1990s. And that was largely responsible for the rapid economic growth rates of these countries in East Asia. The so-called East Asian success story is, partially attributed to this demographic dividend. Now, so it is argued that India is going to sort of reap its demographic dividend in the years to come, and this portends very well for the future. Well, the problem here, and this is sort of the main issue, the challenge here is that, yes, India will have a growing share of the working age population. We'll have a large supply of young people who are able to work in the labor force, but that's an advantage, or that's a demographic dividend only if you can actually gainfully employ these people in productive employment. If they can generate additional output, they can generate additional income for themselves, and this would sort of be the engine for growth of the Indian economy. And this is a big challenge for India, because at this rate, over the next decade or two, we are going to be adding anywhere from 12 to 20 million people into the labor force every year.
Wow.
Providing gainful employment to all these people is not an easy task. It's a Herculean task, especially since India has not done a very good job of providing employment to its current stock of workers. And this is, I think, going to be the biggest challenge, that somehow when India sort of gets this bulge of workers into the population, they have to be gainfully employed, and you have to be able to provide decent, high-quality employment to these workers. Otherwise, you are going to fritter away the demographic dividend, and in fact, in many ways, the demographic dividend could turn out to be a demographic disaster. You have a lot of young people who have no employment, whose aspirations are very high, but they cannot find proper employment. They can foment all kinds of political problems, ethnic divisions, unrest in the country, and so it's very important to be able to find employment for them. I see this as the major challenge in the years ahead. Yes, Indian economy has been growing very rapidly over the last 20 years, but unfortunately, as you are fully aware, a lot of the growth has been what we economists call as jobless growth. Employment has not kept pace with economic growth, especially high-quality employment, what I consider high-quality employment. And by high-quality employment, I mean employment outside of the informal or unorganized sector. Jobs that come with some amount of social protection, some benefits, including sick leave, and possibility of accruing pension. All of those, there are very few such jobs, and a lot of India's current population and the labor force is engaged in informal, unorganized sector work, which is not very high paying to begin with, and has absolutely no social protections of any kind.
Okay, so we get it, that people don't have good jobs now, and how are we going to create good jobs for so many more millions of people? All right, we understand. What about China? Are they in trouble, or are they happy that now they are not the largest? Is it good for them, or is it bad for them?
Again, the answer is not clear-cut. Certainly, China, I should say, took great advantage of its growing labor force. And a lot of its rapid growth over the last 20, 30 years was fueled by putting all these young workers to gainful employment in manufacturing. And that's how China really became the factory of the world, and was able to, that was the growth engine for China. Now, it doesn't have access to this kind of cheap labor anymore. It's running out of cheap labor. It's exhausted it. But meanwhile, you also have to understand that China has moved upscale in terms of the kinds of goods that it produces. It has gone away from low-cost, low-end, manufacturing textiles, garments, apparel, shoes, footwear, all of those things, into more value-added, higher value-added goods and services. And it's sort of been able to make somewhat of a shift to employment that is generally higher value and requires more skills. Because now international, multinational companies that have gone to China in the past to exploit the cheap labor cannot really afford to use China as their manufacturing base. They are shifting their manufacturing facilities to Malaysia, and not so much to Malaysia, but to Vietnam, Bangladesh, India, and perhaps even to Africa in the near future.
So this is the low-wage jobs that are moving out of China. That's what you're saying?
Exactly.
All right.
And so China has sort of been preparing for this shift over the last 20 years. It's invested heavily in high-end technologies, and it's really has developed a comparative advantage in these high-end electronics manufacturing and things like, we've seen all the controversy recently over Huawei and the 5G equipment, artificial intelligence, robotics, all of that is going to help China. Now, you could argue
hang on just a second.
Yeah.
So what you're saying is that the money they made when they had low wage workers, they invested that in creating high-end jobs.
Exactly.
Right?
Investing in technology and innovation.
Right. And that's why they are ahead of India in technology.
Absolutely. Oh, they are ahead. In fact, now they have emerged in many critical technologies as a competitor to the United States.
Right.
Forget about India.
Yeah.
In some critical industries of the future, including electric vehicles, they are probably surpassing or at the threshold of surpassing the United States in terms of their technological advantage.
Yeah, I wrote a few days ago that we are very thrilled that Air India will buy so many more Airbus planes. And next day we read that those planes or some of those planes are actually going to be made in China. So what we are buying the high-end product. But this is very clever of China. They took the surplus that they made when they had low-wage workers and invested it in high-end research or tech and stole some of it perhaps. By borrow or steal or buy.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Whatever they did, they've got it now.
Yes. And again, before we start saying, oh, they stole some of the technology, you should point out to your viewers that the United States was known for copyright infringement, intellectual property theft in the early stages of its industrialization. American companies were borrowing from European technology, from German, British technology, often without paying their dues. And so every country, every developing country goes through this phase of probably not abiding by intellectual property rights fully during its growth.
All right. So can I summarize it in this way, that China is not in big trouble because of its population policies? It used its labor force. It was not the one-child policy, but rather that its labor force was increasing and it has used it very wisely and invested enough so that we can get high-end jobs, or they can get high-end jobs or better paying jobs. They're no more a low-wage country. India may get some of those low-wage jobs, but not many, because as you said, some will go to Vietnam and some will go to other countries, Bangladesh, etc. And what I hear from you is that in India, it's not a big deal either way. It's a problem because we have to create a plus, because we have all these young workers. It's a problem because we have to get them jobs.
Jobs, exactly. Because young workers without jobs can mean trouble for the country as a whole in terms of social unrest. But let me tell you one thing. I don't want to give the false impression that all is gung-ho in China.
Okay. Yeah.
China faces enormous challenges, but here is where I think the biggest challenge for China is going to be. China is experiencing a rapid aging of its population. And the median age of the population is going through the roof in a way. And in fact, never before in human history has a country aged as rapidly as China has, and as low per capita income level as China has. So most European countries, the ones you mentioned, Italy, for instance, Japan, started aging and started experiencing the aging problem, if you will, when they were fairly advanced high-income economies. China, despite its rapid growth, despite all the headlines we see about, how advanced the Chinese economy is and how it's been growing over the last 4 decades, 3-4 decades, China, at the end of the day, is still not a high-income country in terms of per capita.
No, it isn't.
It is a upper middle-income country.
Yeah.
And never before has an upper middle income country faced an aging problem as big as China's. China is going to have literally hundreds of millions of people who are entering retirement age, 60 and above, over the next 3 or 4 decades. And it's not clear that China is prepared for this. China doesn't, while China has a better social protection system than India does, it's still nowhere as good as the Western countries. And so being able to take care of all these elderly, providing healthcare access to them, ensuring that they have some incomes to live on, and they don't fall into poverty, is going to be a Herculean task for China. Okay. Because remember, along with the falling fertility, what's happened in China often is that most people now, most of the elderly who are around, have only one child.
That's it.
So essentially, they don't have such a large family network to take care of them as Indian elders do.
So the problems of the one-child policy are going to haunt them for years to come.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, because now, as you said, China's median age is like 40, same as US.
Yes.
And so they are old before they are well off.
Yeah, absolutely. They are the first country to be old while they are still poor.
Right.
And this is going to be a major problem because you need a certain level of income to be able to provide a comprehensive social protection system for the elderly.
Okay, that's very good. I think it's a great bit of knowledge you have shared with us, and a lot of, none of us has the detailed information about China that you have. You've been there many times. And thanks for this. I think this is excellent. And
can I make one more point?
Yeah.
In addition to the social protection system, you have to realize that as a population ages, its disease profile also changes substantially. Combining the fact that China's income has increased so rapidly and the fact that it's aging so rapidly means that the so-called diseases of affluence, diseases like diabetes and cardiac problems, heart disease, are widespread. In fact, those problems have ballooned in China to the point where China has the world's largest number of diabetics and people with heart disease. And so again, that's going to require an enormous investment in healthcare expenditures. Now, China has increased its health expenditures, government health expenditures substantially. It does have a universal health insurance system, unlike India. But it's still rudimentary at the end of the day. It's not as comprehensive as you would find in the UK or the United States or Japan. And so these health challenges, these aging population, pension, social protection challenges are going to be very formidable. And so China has a difficult few decades ahead of it too.
Well, that's very helpful because I certainly had not thought about China as having a health problem. But yes, obviously there are problems of affluence that are going to hit them hard, and there's nobody to look after them.
Exactly. I have friends, by the way, I have friends in China. I have some very good friends and colleagues in China who now are facing the problem of caring for 4 elderly people in the family, and there's they just have 2. The husband and the wife have to now care for 4 people, the parents of the wife and the parents of the husband. And it's not clear how they are going to manage this. I mean, they have to run to one place, to one province to take care of one set of in-laws, and then you have to run to the other place to take care of your own parents, and you don't have any siblings to share in these responsibilities. So it's a matter of great tension and stress to young Chinese people and middle-aged Chinese people.
Yeah, okay. Well, that's very helpful, Anil. We will end here and thank you so much. And let's say bye to our viewers and just say that I will just say the next time I'll be back with another distinguished guest, though I don't know whether I can find people who are as distinguished as my brother-in-law.
No, well, my
Okay.
qualifications
They may
sound more
have the
impressive
degrees.
than
They may have the degrees, but they won't be family, right? So they're not as qualified.
right.
All right. Okay. All right.
Thank you. Thank you, Subodh. This
Bye-bye.
was a pleasure. Bye now.
Bye-bye. Bye.